Hello, and welcome to another episode of Automate Office Work. I'm your host, Justin. Today's episode is Innovating the Right Way with Victoria Lee. So, as you gathered, I have a guest today, Victoria Lee. Welcome. Can you tell us about yourself and how you came to be on this podcast?
Hey Justin, great to be here, and thank you. So a little short background about me is I'm a corporate attorney, but I'm also an engineer, and around 12 years between practicing and working as an engineer, and came to this podcast by way of you since we overlap in the legal tech industry, and since we both really care about making, I guess, legal work more enjoyable for the people that continue to do it. Since there's a lot of like technological innovation that's going on right now. So I think that's why we're both here right now.
So you're an engineer. Did you study engineering before law school?
No, I actually went to boot camp for 3 months and then afterwards joined First Dibs and worked as a first front-end engineer there for like a year and a half. It was quite fun, I have to say. Huge learning curve, not unlike being like a first-year lawyer. The first time I pressed my PR to get, of course, I was like so scared that I was going to bring down the whole website. But First Dibs has like a great security infrastructure. Like you have the test site, the master site, you have all the unit tests, so I didn't have to worry about that. But yeah, it was very
Ah,
fun. So the engineering part
this
comes naturally because of that.
This is amazing, and I'm really glad that I just learned this about you.
Mhm.
So it sounds to me like you were a lawyer first, and then you went to learn technology, some coding.
Yeah, so without boring everyone, I went to law school, came out, went into corporate law. My background's a little unique in the sense that my first law firm was opening a career office. So instead of just working in one practice area, I was able to work in bankruptcy finance, white collar litigation. And I did jump from there, and a little bit of employment. I jumped from there after a year and a half, after having like a year of background and all that, and focused on finance. After going to in-house, I decided that I really wanted to work in tech. And what better way to go into tech unless you're going in-house than to be an engineer? So I tried a boot camp and realized that engineering is actually quite like lawyering. And that's
Uh-huh.
how I bring my background around because I can poke around in like the code. And I even created my own prototype of playbook in like a week. Um, and of course, the 10 plus years of lawyering brings the subject matter expertise.
Wow. So I see this very often. People
Mhm,
reach out to me, they say, "Look, I'm already a professional.
mhm,
I want to get into technology." And then they often ask me, "Do you
mhm,
have resources so I can learn how to code?"
mhm,
And I often tell them, I've never seen a person like you before. I've never seen a person successfully pivot from
mhm,
some other expertise and then add tech onto it. I've often
mhm,
seen people who started out as like computer
uh-huh.
coders,
Sure,
and then they go to law school or some other
sure.
kind of professional school. So I've often
Mhm.
seen it the other way, but I've never seen it this way. So I'm so glad you're going to be an inspiration to everybody who
Uh,
has this desire to do this. Like you're telling them it's possible.
yeah, it's totally possible. And to be honest, it's actually easier than the other way around because law school is expensive and, boot camp is less so. It is still kind of expensive, so I want everyone to be practical about it. But compared to like 3 years of like, law school tuition in the United States, it's actually very cheaper. So definitely doable. I know a handful of us that have done this, and, many of us still stay on the engineering side. I was one of the few that was kind of like, well, actually, I kind of miss being a lawyer, which is why I freelanced even while being an engineer. And so I came back, but once you make the switch, you could definitely do it. And there are a lot of free, resources. Free Code Camp, Tree Academy was one of the ones that I did. It was $20 a month to decide whether or not you like it. Try leak coding, and now that there's like cursor and vibe coding, I think it's going to be a lot easier for people to pick up the basics. Of course, like any other thing, vibe coding alone is probably not going to give you a security infrastructure that's going to be good enough to sell to enterprises, but good enough if you learn that to join a company where you can learn the basics, right?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm getting the feeling then that this has helped you in your ability to innovate, and that is the topic of today: innovating the right way.
Mhm.
Um, I guess give us a background of your innovation experience. Perhaps you saw some innovating the wrong way, which helped you.
Yes.
I don't know.
Great opener, Justin. So yeah, basically my innovation experience is like even pre-GPT. I was at in-house and we were a 50-person company. So like finally the GC was asking the COO, we need a CLM. And then we were deciding between, going for Ironclad or any of the other ones. So I knew what we needed to go through in order to understand why we needed a CLM and what we wanted from them.
Let's explain what a CLM is for
Oh,
non-lawyers.
sorry, for the non-lawyers, one of the legal tech out there, one of the oldest ones is a contract managing system, which allows collaboration, but also allows you to have kind of like a library of a bunch of your contracts. So you're never like struggling like 2 years from now going like, hey, what did we actually agree to? Can we actually terminate? Are we on like, on auto renewal, that kind of stuff? And of course, in line with that, there's like the e-discovery and the M&A due diligence that has been around before GPT came on and blasted everyone with new possibilities in 2023. Oh, so yeah, so other than that, also while consulting, I helped a procurement team decide whether or not they also wanted kind of like a procurement contract, CLM contract management kind of tool at this point. GPT and that would have been a little too far in advance for their highly restricted and regulated purposes, but they did want something that would allow procurement and legal to work better and more efficiently. And that's the story I wanted to begin with, which is that I realized then there's a good way to innovate in the sense that you had two lawyers, myself and the chief legal officer, sitting on a demo with the procurement team. And the procurement team is like, we vetted them. They know what they're doing. They promised us that they've worked with procurement and legal before. Let's work with them. And then we got on there and we spent the first 15 minutes of this call with the vendor going like, so tell me how your process works. What kind of documents do you work with? Can you walk us through this? What do you want us to do? And like, with every question, I'm seeing my chief legal officer get redder and redder, and like you see the team's Slack going off as he's yelling at the procurement guy in a professional manner, being like, I thought they were going to demo us how they can actually help us. Why is this like, a fact finding kind of thing? I don't have time for this. We're potentially in the middle of remediation issues and a bunch of other like, documents that need to be signed. And like, the execs are breathing down my throat. I came on here because this would help bring a foundation, but why are we spending this whole time? Like he answered the first few. He's like, of course, we have legal and we have procurement. We want a way so that we have some of the business flows and procurement working well with legal. We believe that your tool may be able to help us. You told us that you work with a lot of procurement. Tell us how it actually fits into like what have you done for other customers? And because we've also had like a bad experience 2 to 3 years before that where it didn't work out after like months of trying to implement it. And then we'll just say like the 1 hour meeting got cut to 30 minutes and our CLO told the procurement team to not reschedule them for another year and pretty much say like unless they know what our workflow is and what we want to do, don't bring me on for the demo. And that's when I was kind of like, you already have a lot of really busy people, really. And he wasn't just doing that because he's a jerk. He literally was leading a litigation defense. There were a bunch of contracts that had to go up to the executive director that was on his seat. And like for an hour from him, it's like a huge amount of time, right? So when the vendor comes in, it's kind of like, I worked with 5 different companies just like yours, highly regulated. Procurement and legal work together, but they're in conjunction and coordinated. This is how we help you with your documents, like master services agreements, enterprise agreements, and how you're going to track, and these are the benefits. Oh, you probably would have had a client in us, right? But then when you come in and you're like, tell me more about the documents with like a blank slate. So do you work with leases? And we're over here going like, to the procurement team, what did you actually talk to them about? Like, that leases are like less than 5% of our procurement needs. What's going on, right? So I think that kind of like led my first kind of like, okay, so there's a lot of like the communication and sales part of innovation that doesn't really work well, where like, the vendors talking with maybe procurement or KM teams give or take a little bit of limited information, but then the end user comes on expecting that, the whole problem has been discussed and that there's an actual workable solution, maybe 70% of the way like usable. And it's blindsided when you're like kind of like, why did she procure a tool that is strong in litigation and research, but not going to help me as like a finance attorney, right? So
Mhm.
that's my story of why I do believe that there are ways that we could increase our ability to innovate in the right way.
I'm hearing several points here.
Oh,
that you're
good,
driving
good,
home.
right?
Do you want to go and list those points?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the first one, of course, on the buyer side is that the buyers need to understand like what exactly are you trying to fix and like what is your target group. In that case, procurement thought that they were fixing something more for legal, but from legal's perspective, we wanted something that was easy for the procurement team to work with and maybe was not as highly legal. In other cases that I've worked with teams, like you have like a KM team that may be buying software saying like, hey,
Can you explain KM for
oh,
people who
sorry.
don't know this term?
Yes, sorry, Justin. Yeah, so KM, we have, like a lot of larger law firms now have innovation teams, knowledge management team, which used to have been
Knowledge management.
right? And then you also have I just call them innovation, but you can also call them innovation, who are like the experts. They were lawyers. They are lawyers. They also have a technologist bent, so they can do the things while your regular lawyers are busy billing their 300 hours per month. So getting that bonus, get your bag. So, but either way, though, if you have a lawyer who was maybe working in commercial real estate, they may not understand like, what a fund finance lawyer does, right? Which is why I think there's also kind of a gap currently that I see when I talk to people, like my friends who are currently now, we're going to say that we're 25, but we suspend belief a little. And now that young people have become counsels and partners, and a little bit of experience added in, they get these emails from KM going like, oh my God, we signed up with X, or, we're talking to Y, and they're saying that they can really help you. And by the time like, you have like, the council pushing it down to like a mid-year, or like the really excited trying it themselves, and you're just kind of like, why are you bringing an M&A due diligence tool and telling me that I can use this as a senior counsel and say like M&A drafting or like finance or securitization, right? So again, you have that little gap. So I think the first thing that really does help the whole industry is understanding who your target is. Like, and it could be practice group specific, and inside the practice group, it could also be like I think seniority specific, but less than seniority, I think it's more of like what exactly is their task and responsibilities, right? Because that's very different. The M&A due diligence checklist that a lot of the old technology machine learning does well, not going to translate well with negotiation and drafting. And, of course, the higher you go, the more it's on the nuances and context.
Hmm.
Similarly, commercial real estate's not going to overlap as much with securitization, there, and it may also be different than derivatives. So understanding that would probably help identify the problem that you're trying to solve with the automation, which I think is number two. And once you identify it and the vendor identifies it, I see an optimal world where both sides are happy. Vendors are selling, and like law firms or in-house counsel are able to like have maybe 2-week onboarding, but all of a sudden, they're decreasing their grunt work because of the tools.
Uh, So I mean, I'm hearing identify your problem, and along with that, you need to have people participate in the problem identification, people who know the actual experience. So you can't have a different department buy something for another department's problem. And even more so, even if a person is in the right department, they need to be in that same practice area that is going to use it. You can't have like one tool that works because you think a tool works for you doesn't mean
Mhm.
it's going to work for somebody else.
Correct. And honestly, if it's going to work for everyone, then I don't, in my humble experience, don't know what these tools bring on top of, say, like a GPT or a Claude license that if you pay $200 or like $100 a month for, like if it's going to work for everyone, it's at the general level of just using an LLM. It's not the level that you're trying to sell as a legal tech, which is like we have found that we've understood your problem, and we've made it so that you don't need all the other extra stuff, and we've made it easier, increase the accuracy and efficiency for you to use our version of GPT or Claude. And so there's something going under the hood that like adds to the solution more than your regular GPT or Claude Pro subscription. And at that point, we still have like a nuance, and that's where I think yes, you do need to know either talk to or have someone involved that actually does the work, right? So
Hmm. I'm also hearing from your story that you need to be skeptical. You need to push back. You need to be critical. You need to ask questions. You can't just accept the things that are told. But then this also requires that you have a level of experience. You know the right questions to ask, and you know the level of answers that you should be expecting back.
Yeah, I mean, that is a good point. I didn't even realize that, but that probably, especially my story, would have helped our innovation for that company. Because at that point, the CLO was so annoyed. He didn't even want to talk about another CLM for 6 months. He was like, I'm focusing on the stuff that we have
Wow.
until we get like vendors that actually understand our process and are willing to like come with demos that work for us. I don't even want to waste more time on this. And so he was just kind of like, I'm not accepting anymore for 6 months. I'm letting, and he told the procurement team down. The procurement team, of course, understood and was like, we're really sorry. Vendor,
Wow.
large vendor, by the way, promised us that they've done tons of procurement. And so we were under the understanding that they were going to come in, wow you away with how they're going to make it easier between us. So we're also like kind of blindsided. But yes, so I feel like not on our procurement team because they were sincere in believing that the vendor would come prepared. And I think the definition of prepared needs to change. The vendor needs to come willing to answer questions, but also prepared, understanding what your end user might want and use. And that's where I think, yeah, you're right. Understanding the people that actually do it makes a big difference. Because, like, I can even give you a good example. You know, I recently signed up for Lexus Plus AI, and I'm paying for that out of my pocket. I'm not sponsored though, Lexus. If you want to sponsor me and give me a couple of free years, I'm not gonna say no. However, like when I talked to them, the salesperson came in and like he already knew that I did financial transactions and tech transactions, and he had basically a tech transaction up, and was kind of like he still knew more litigation and how Lexus would help with litigation, but I appreciated the fact that a lot of his demo when he talked to me was on like tech transactions. And in addition to that, like once I started using it, the reason why I'm happy is like, and this is kind of where I'm kind of like, Lexus, you know, you've hit the ball. As a finance lawyer, my favorite part of Lexus Plus AI is not Protege, which just came out recently and was like a huge thing. But when I talk to lawyers over drinks, you know, the part that we're all happy about is their Create Plus. Like their definitions checker. No one talks about it. It's hidden. You see it in their
Ah,
demos. But like if you any junior attorney, any senior attorney, when you talk about that, their lights light up, their eyes light up. They're like, what? This is out there. Why is no one talking about this? Is this AI? And I'm like, I guess it could be AI, but it's not like drafting. It literally just does one thing that every lawyer hates, which is you have 30 pages of definitions and you have to check every single one in your like other 250 pages to see are these defined? Are they used the correct way? Are they defined twice because someone didn't realize it was already counted, you know? And then Lexis Plus Create, like you just
ah.
click on it and it tells you 10 definitions not
So
defined, 10 not used. And you're like, oh, 2 hours saved, you know?
So this is our next point of how to innovate the right way. You have to identify the problems that are
Mhm.
not just your problem, but the problem that your user is experiencing, the problem that
Exactly.
your user wants solved.
Right.
And it might not be something big and flashy that you
Mhm.
can like put out as PR and tell everybody, look how amazing it is that we can check these definitions. That sounds boring, but that's actually what people want. People want the boring stuff.
Yeah, the boring stuff that works. Because I've had like 5 discussions about this after started using it. Because people ask me about AI, right? And I'd be like, let me tell you what I'm happy about. I started using Create and like I now like my definitions checking. Oh, so much better. And they're like, what? There's something like that. Why am I not using it? Like, let me
It
sign
doesn't
up.
even
I
have to
would
be
take
AI.
feedback. Yeah, like it doesn't at this point. Just the fact that it doesn't, I do think I don't know how it happens under the hood. I'm guessing there's some AI involved, unless they have like a very strong machine learning algorithm. But I'm like, you're right. If it does a job that people hate and like no one likes checking definitions, whether it's like a 10-page document or if it's a 300-page document, no one. And it does it correctly. This does it 70% of the time correctly, and it's very easy to verify because it will actually click,
Yeah.
you go to the place, and then things like that. You're right. It's consistent, it's accurate, and it's something that actually solves a real problem. It doesn't have to be flashy. This is boring to non-lawyers, but this had like a 1 hour discussion over like drinks the other day where everyone was talking about like, oh my God, how embarrassing it was because they missed the definition or the definition was wrong and it was on their term, but they read it like 5 times, like those things. And that's where I really feel like it's the end user that's important versus a lot of times in the hype market that I see, you see a lot of like project management tools, which are helpful. But your individual like first year to fifth year attorney, they're not dealing with the stress of project management. They're dealing with the stress of being a lawyer. So yes, getting that right would probably help lift the whole industry. If other vendors are listening, if you add that to your offerings, a lot of people in big law would currently be very helpful for you if you could do like
Hmm.
a definitions checker 2.0. So
Okay. So, in addition to identifying the problem, having the right people to tell you
right.
what the problem is, you also need to identify problems that people actually want solved. You also need it to be boring and reliable, not necessarily big and flashy.
Hmm.
We've already got like 5 points in how to do this right. I'm
Oh,
also thinking you have to have the right people involved in the discussions, the people that
right.
can actually hold a discussion, because if a person isn't able to talk through and push
Hmm.
back and think critically, you might have a person who's just like, yeah, give me whatever you're buying, I don't care what it is, I'll just buy it.
Right, right.
You can't have that person in charge.
Right, because in the end, what's going to happen if you do is you're going to have like a 1 year subscription, maybe a 2 year subscription, and then no one's going to use it. Like I have definitely talked to a lot of people who say that the only people using the tool is their KM or knowledge management team. So you have like a law firm of 1,000 people, and their actual user base is like 5 people because none of the lawyers really want to touch it. Because efficiency wise, if a lawyer can review and mark up a document in 2 hours, but in order to use the tool, you have to actually train the tool, understand the tool, and that takes like an hour. And then you have to review the output and correct the output, and
Uh-huh.
that takes 4 hours. All of a sudden, a two
What a
hour job
waste.
has turned into 5 hours, right? Yeah, so it's like, I feel like there is that also disconnect. You're right that like you have to understand who the end user is because otherwise your implementation is only going to go as far as your knowledge management team. And maybe if a law firm has like staff attorney that are not like on the billable hour system, maybe like that. But if we're talking about like how to like fully evaluate, I know we just really focused on the internal assessment and problem definition, but there's also kind of like the vendor evaluation. I'm just like referring back to like a framework that I did, which I think um, right now I don't know if people are doing, but it also helps for them to do. And some of the easier ones, which is kind of hard to verify, is like, reputation. Are they in the market and are peer law firms using them for that practice group? Because I notice a lot of law firms, when they talk to vendors, they'll be like, oh, yeah, they told me that they use, like, say, ABC Code. And I'd be like, yeah, but do they use ABC Code's e-discovery platform or do they use ABC Code's contract management? Or are they using ABC Code's Gen AI's drafting tool? Like, what are you trying to look solve for? And like, does it help? Because like Ironclad, amazing CLM. Honestly, I think while I was at like the startup, we were really pushing to get the CLM. Um, Not so sure I would have pushed for maybe their new Gen AI tools in their current beta version, right? But that's kind of why I'm like, it's great. A lot of people love them and use them for CLM. But if the reputation is in CLM and you're looking for a tool that's going to help your in-house team in drafting or sales enterprise agreements and getting them out, which is much more of like a playbook thing, and a playbook being kind of your policy list of like this is what you can accept and what you can't accept, then whoever is making the decision or the initial contact, it could give like a easy way to filter out people by saying like, do you have enterprise clients or clients of my size that are using you for this workflow? Like either if you're looking for like, drafting like in-house teams or, like I want people in finance, not just leasing teams, because leasing and, keeping a list of leases is very different than like, drafting like an APA asset purchase agreement, right? So that's one thing.
You might go even further and ask them, can you give me a list of current customers that I can talk with so I can
Yeah,
actually hear about their experience, not just hear it from third person?
I mean, that I would say, Justin, would be amazing if they had like a list of like customers or even like case studies, like not just anonymous and aggregated, because like
Hmm.
I'm assuming that all of them are backed with like data, but like I'm not so sure if they're just gonna be like, oh well, we know that this use case is there, so we're just gonna say top 500 law firm uses us like this, and then no one's actually gonna ask. But like, having like named like, Cleary, I think, said that they use Legora. But like if they have like a case study says Cleary uses Legora in these practice groups. Unfortunately, the one that Cleary sent out in the video that I watched, it was talking about basically creating emails and like, legal research. But like if you're buying for like a finance team or a securitization team, being like, oh, the CLO team uses Legora. Okay, our CLO team also is like backed up and it's going crazy. we'd love to see if we can do like a pilot doing that. So you're right, like either being able to talk to them or having like a clear use case with like the client and the practice group identified as well as the workflow, that could do wonders.
Mhm. I think also when you're evaluating a vendor, make sure that they're going to be there for you in the future. You
Mhm.
don't want some company that has just started and they're not doing very well, and they'll probably go bankrupt next year, and you're stuck with their tool.
Right, right. Especially if you're like paying for the full year lease. So like making sure that they're funded and they're going to be there. And also like I think Justin, you brought up a good point in the sense that you want there to be communication and support. Like in addition to being there for you, I feel like there's a different
Don't
level
just
of
sell.
like yeah, there needs to be aftercare. Like you can't talk to them afterwards and say like I bought like a 2 year of subscription for your product and it's not working. Help me because it's not working this way because like for example, another example is like if their Litera compare not Litera, sorry, if their compare version redlining only shows moves, doesn't show moves but only adds and deletes, and you say like, can you add moves? Because for us the compare doesn't really help if you don't have the moves. And they say like, oh well, that's not that important, you could just, like eyeball the changes. And if there is something that's similar, and if their after service or customer support is telling you to change how a lawyer works and adds more steps and more clicks, then I'm kind of like it's better for you to hold out for the company that will hear you and say like this is how our tool actually works with that, or here's what's on our roadmap where we expect to fix that. And with the roadmap, of course, you get the whole point of like, are you buying a roadmap that's going to happen? What is their average development timeline? Are they a team that will push out features every 6 months, which a lot of the vendors are, and that's great. Sure, it may be buggy, but they got it out to you, and then the next 6 months later, they're going to iterate and it's going to be fixed. Or is it going to take 18 months for them to push out the first feature, and it's already like 2 years behind their competitors, and now you got the buggy beta version, right? And if you're paying for it, why are you helping other people by using the buggy beta version when company ABC that came out like 2 years ago has already gone through the bugs and therefore can help you, you know,
Mm,
that too in vendor
really
evaluation.
understand. I
Yeah.
think I also heard in your comments that it really matters, like the adoption. And so, if you want a company to be able to adopt a change,
Hmm.
it needs to be a kind of a change that the company can easily adopt. We're humans.
Right.
We
Right.
don't want the whole world to be changed all at once. There needs to be like an iteration where I can kind of go along with it. If you make a huge massive change and then you complain, "Oh, nobody's going along and using this." You
Right.
can't really complain.
You're right.
So, pick your
That
change.
I agree, because like if you're gonna come along and tell a bunch of people that like, hey, law firms, you don't need lawyers anymore, you're going to get a lot of pushback, right? Because like, first of all, is it consistent? There's going to be a lot of questions because like from the clients too, like it's great for a lot of people. I've actually seen a lot of articles say like, lawyers are going to be the first to be replaced. And I'm just like, that's all great. But when I was in-house and I was hiring big law companies, part of the reason why we did that was not because the GC and I were like less smart than the big law. It was not because we cannot, negotiate our mortgage warehouses ourselves. No, it's because we want to allocate the risk. So if something goes wrong and the board is like, hey, legal, why did you agree sign off on this in this one deal? Like, did you not see the red flags? We could be like, we were reasonable, we weren't negligent. We hired, ABC law firm that is a top 10. Look at their profiles. They're really good at this. So a part of that is that, and including that is the fact it's not their name, it's the fact that they have, the malpractice insurance. So like if we get screwed over, then insurance company Chubbs will come in and be like, oh yeah, we're covered for this, we got you, don't worry, right? So like so these kind of questions come up when you're like, okay, so you're going to replace the law firms, so there's going to be no law firms, it's just going to be in-house, they're going to do these multi-billion-dollar deals, and then like if something god forbid goes wrong because in-house teams are overwhelmed, who's going to be under the radar? We already know that cyber insurance will not cover legal tech. I mean, if you actually read those insurance policies, there's a bunch of outs. And like legal tech is not considered like, practicing the law. So when you're able to convince the insurance companies that legal tech is also should be covered for the same amount of malpractice insurance, it may make a risk allocation of decision easier for in-house to be like, yeah, no, I don't need Wachtel, I don't need Cleary. We're going to do this in-house because we, as in-house counsel, can cover it. and we're covered by insurance. But until that happens, like I'm like, it's very simple just to be like, we're going to disrupt the
Wow.
industry. You don't need lawyers, right? And then, of course, the lawyers themselves, like, some of these lawyers like doing lawyer stuff. Like, Justin, I came back to being a lawyer because I actually like practicing in addition to being an engineer. So if you're telling me, if a good simple analogy for non-lawyers is like if I'm a golfer and you're like, I, Boston Robotics, have created a golfing machine. You just stand there and you press the button and then whoop, birdie. I'm gonna be like, okay, so I'm just watching golf now. I'm not golfing anymore. Like, sure, if you gave me a golf club that said like, hey, I will based on like the weather patterns and like ideal, it will tell you which angle, what iron to use. And then, like I will actually help you depending on like the level of swing help you want to get you that birdie. I'll be like, oh, that's great. Like I'm Tiger Woods now. But if I'm standing on the side pressing a button, being like, I'm Tiger Woods, it's different. So there's also the cultural change that I think, the industry has to like figure out.
The example that you just chose, like
Hmm.
the distance to a little hole in the ground that we want a
Hmm.
ball to go to, that is very objective. When I think
Yes.
of legal work, it's very
Hmm.
much subjective. Like the idea of a perfect contract might be different from company to company because they're
Right.
going to have different goals in mind. They're going to have
Right.
different risk appetites. They're going to have different positions in the
For
market of
sure.
how much they can
Yes,
influence.
for sure.
So it's like it's not just playing golf. It's a different person playing golf at every single different golf course. Like it's different for everybody.
Right. You bring up a really important, valid point that a lot of the GCs that legal tech people talk about, where like the GC will be like, I would love to use a playbook automating system because we do a lot of sales contracts and it would be great for legal not to have to approve every single one and just run a playbook through. But at the same time, the GC will be like, however, a lot of the nuances up here because the COO will send like a contract and be like, oh, Blackstone, we want this. Or like, oh,
Mm,
VC backed, like, Y Combinator's friend or something like that. We want to agree to them because then Y Combinator is going to use us all throughout, do not negotiate back. But it's like a lot of things like that. Or you just kind of know by negotiating with the team, like, oh, in this market, like it turns out something most recent is whether or not force majeure includes hacking. I believe previously in the market, like bugs and hacking was not included in force majeure in tech contracts, but recently it's changing and for AI, like all of this, yes, you can program it, you can instruct it, but are you really getting that nuance when every single time you have to type a new prompt that basically says, for this company, we will have to, accept all changes or be more market. For this company, press back
okay.
aggressively, right? So yeah, Justin, like a lot of the nuance, a lot of the subjective, you know, connectiveness that's required in corporate law, it like in order to get it distilled identify it, articulate it, and then instruct the AI at where AI is right now. I don't think we're there yet. We may get there in the future, but that's like another area that like we have to fix before we could blanket say that lawyers can be replaced.
This sounds like a lot of work. And I get the feeling that a lot of people, they just assume that technology is something that is already ready. I just take it off of the shelf and I buy it and I put it in because everybody else says I need to or I'm going to fall behind.
Mhm.
But from what I'm hearing from you, there needs to be a lot of intention behind innovation. You need to have the right people. You need to identify. You need to identify the right problem that is right for you. Your needs are going to be unique. You need to be able to analyze these things and review them and think critically, push back. Don't just believe everything that you hear. So, wow, if I'm going to innovate the right way, it sounds like a lot of work.
Honestly, Justin, at this point, because it's so new, yeah, I believe it's a lot of work, and a lot of people seem to gloss over all the thinking that gets involved because, a lot of the marketing basically says sign up and like, you can immediately use our tools after like a 1 hour onboarding and it's going to fix everything. But yeah, I think it takes a lot of work in order to get the right tool, get it to a point where your people are going to use it and be happy using it, right? Because I think being happy using it will be the stickiness.
I like this. So
Hmm.
I've heard this from some other people too that technology is meant for the people.
Yeah,
You're ultimately serving human beings and you
correct.
want the human beings to be happy. maybe even feel fulfilled in what they're doing. So if you were to like take away some person's ability to play golf, you might be thinking like, oh, it's making more efficient. But the other person's like, you just took away my happiness.
right?
I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, in the future, maybe we'll all be Wall-E and we're just gonna be like living through our like, screens. But you're probably not gonna get a bunch of people who like playing golf to sign up for like a machine that will golf on their behalf. So yeah, I do think that there is something. First of all, I don't think the technology is there and consistency and accuracy and all
Mm,
that like technical level. But in the cultural push, I do feel like people are forgetting the fact that, like unless you talk to the lawyers, back to like talk to your end users, figure out what the end users want to be automated. Because a lot of times they're like, we're gonna do the drafting for you. And you're just kind of like, talk to the lawyers. They don't want to deal with, the definitions checking. But the drafting and the creativity, that's not the part that they hate. That's being a lawyer. And a lot of people are happy and proud of being a lawyer. So yeah, you're
uh-huh.
taking away the ability to actually swing the club and you're basically making them watching a channel of like, Boston Robotics lawyer or I don't know, Harvey Lawyer if there's a future one. But like, I do believe that this is something that you should do. And even though I knock at Harvey, I have to say, if Harvey does get this correct, I think they're on the right track. They said that there was something in the online forums about Harvey creating like an online Outlook triage thing. And I was like, if Harvey jumps from automatic workflows to online triage in your Outlook, like add that Outlook triage and a definitions checker and then chef's kits for a lot of law firms, but I have yet to see anything that comes up. So just for a push for like, I do think Harvey does talk to some end users because when I heard that, I was like, that's another thing that lawyers would love, online Outlook triage. If there's a bunch of like 50 emails, 10 of them have all these attachments, and you want to know, like, based on like one click, like, here's your three attachments, and here's how they were changed in between conform copy. Oh God, lawyers will probably pay out of pocket to be able to use that if, approved by their firms, right? But yeah,
uh,
make lawyers happy.
I have a previous episode where a guest and I discussed for an hour everything that is wrong with email.
Oh
And
God, yeah.
we concluded that about 90% of emails should not be emails. You should not be conveying data inside an email. There really needs to be like a database system where
Mhm.
you have like project management. So like if there's a change in a contract, that contract should be in a database where it's tracking the different versions, and
Mhm.
so it's not in your email.
I mean, I
That's data
completely agree
death.
with that.
Nobody else can see it.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the only thing I would push back slightly is the fact that like one person probably controls the draft and you may not want everyone to be able to change it. But with using your analogy, maybe giving them permissions and having some people not have permissions to make the changes, then yes, that would be great. Or if it allows you to be like, maybe if with the AI automated, like you can see it and accept and reject each one before it goes into it and just not an email format. Because like there definitely have been times where like, the other side sincerely wanted a change but did not flag it, or we did not approve of it, and if just accepting it without redlining it again would have put our clients in a bind. But
Mhm.
yeah, email definitely. I don't know why legal tech is focusing on drafting when I feel like if they can get the Outlook triage issue fixed, then like especially the ones that like lawyers care about and not what like project managers care about, because like we care about like fixing the 100 emails that all need to be like answered in the next 1 hour ASAP and distilling the information that you need from that in a easily readable but accurate way, especially if it deals with like five different parties and like attachments like you said, like
Mhm.
that kind of data, like figuring out how to track those changes easily and being able to say yes or no to those changes quickly and picking out the changes that I want to change whatever master document you have. Like
Mhm.
that's something we want. But I'm assuming that's a little more difficult than creating like a Word plugin, which is why we don't have that yet. But
It,
Harvey did announce something about Outlook last month. So I'm
it,
gonna keep an eye out on
there's also a problem with human language. In addition to studying computers and law, I also
it.
studied linguistics. So I've
Nice.
studied how human language works at its base. Human language is infinite and
Mhm.
it's ambiguous. It means multiple things to different people.
Right.
So any kind of a word plugin analyzing the content of an email, it's going to have a hard time. People miss
Ugh.
stuff. People say the wrong thing. They misspell. They use the
Mhm.
wrong word. They leave words out. I don't know if you've ever noticed, like when I'm writing, I accidentally skip words because I did it in my head, but then I'm
Right, right.
rereading and I'm like, I just missed a word. What word was there? Kind of
You're
like,
right.
we're not very good at this.
Yeah, or if there's like two questions and then they just say okay, and you're like okay to both, okay to one, because the person who was responding was like on their phone just being like okay, but they only saw one sentence. So you're right, there is. Although I have to still say the email problem, if people can fix it, that would be something people would love to be fixed. But you're right in the
So
sense, I don't know if we're there.
apply these thoughts to contract drafting.
Hmm.
I think that drafting a contract needs to be completely changed. The base of contracting should not be a human language. Like you've learned
Oh,
coding, you learned law and coding.
yeah, yeah.
Um, Computer coding, you put the same inputs in, you
Hmm.
always get the same thing out. It's very precise.
Hmm.
Human language, you try to draft a contract, you think you got it pretty precise, it's going to go to litigation and they're going to define your words differently than what you meant it. But
You're
human
right.
language is interpreted differently. So I think we're
You're
trying to use the wrong thing in the wrong way. Ultimately, I could see contracts being written not in a human language, but if we're going to be using AI and have AI review them, why don't we put the contracts into like an AI native language? A language that is beyond human language to get to like a computer code that is
like kind of
absolutely
like Python
precise.
contract or
Uh-huh.
like,
So
well,
I'm
I mean,
thinking you're familiar with XML and JSON.
yeah.
I would compare contracts. A contract is not a collection of words. It's not
Hmm.
a collection of paragraphs or even pages. A
Hmm.
contract at its core is a collection of intents. It's intents
Right.
to be bound. It's intention to be obligated. So
I
you would
mean,
have a batch of these obligations. It doesn't matter if they're split across different pages or across different paragraphs. It belongs in a chunk. Like here is this obligation, boom. And an obligation then has certain elements. And every one of those elements needs to be clearly spelled out. Otherwise, it's unenforceable. And we as humans, we go along typing like these random paragraphs. We miss a lot of stuff. We accidentally don't fill in the essential pieces. Uh, there are also then many exceptions that need to be
mhm,
made to these obligations. You
right.
say this obligation it's not triggered by default; it's triggered by something else that is
Mhm,
conditional in the
right.
future. That
Right.
condition needs to be spelled out very, very clearly. Like if you say, "I will pay you $5 if it rains on Tuesday,"
Hmm.
as a human, that looks like a very, very nice obligation. AI has no idea what rain is. And
Right.
you're going to have to then have a human judge decide for you what is rain? It's a single drop, it's a bunch of water, and where on earth? Like you never said.
Right. Right.
So
And
I
is
could
it
imagine that
Tuesday
the
where?
AI, yeah, I
Right.
could imagine that the AI could do like some kind of a review
Hmm.
to tell us that all of the essential things are here. Maybe we're not even using Word. Maybe we're using some kind of a system where you're like, let's pull an obligation. Boom. Okay, here's the different family types of
Hmm.
obligations. I picked this one. Okay, here's the exact obligation I mean. Okay, boom. Okay, party here, party here. Here's what they're doing. Here's when it's triggered.
Hmm.
And then the AI would be able to tell you, you just have a condition here, the word rain, that is not clear. You're going to have the human is going to have to define that. Would you like me to suggest another way that you could write this? And the AI could suggest, let's use weather.com. And you tell me the zip code or
Hmm.
whatever. And now we have a record. It's going to say if it rained or not on that day. Boom, it's bright, it's clear. You don't need a human. And I do think that we are going to be able to get to. I mentioned this to you in our background discussion
Hmm.
before today that I think AI could help us get to more precision. And maybe we don't want 100% precision. Maybe we do like having humans involved. We do want it to be a little fuzzy because we don't always know what the future will be. So we want humans to
Hmm.
define that maybe in the future because
Right.
we don't know what the definition should be now. But I guess a lot of my feeling is we should be approaching this with intent. Like, what do we want out of our contracts? What do we want law
Hmm.
to be doing? And maybe we want 90% precision. Like the
Hmm.
definition of rain, whether it rained or not, whether I owe you $5 or not,
Mhm.
it really doesn't matter. Just let me know now, and I will gladly pay you or not pay you immediately. What I don't want is to have to wait 2 years and have to pay expensive law firms for 2 years to argue over the meaning of a word.
Interesting. So
And I'll finish there.
basically, yeah. So basically, your idea is that like in the future there will be a different type of language for contracts beyond English, and it will be assisted
Data.
by AI. Okay. And this is going to be more precise because the words themselves are underneath just like coded, I guess, characters.
Mhm. Like the idea of exclusivity or something.
Hmm.
That's a legal idea that is
Hmm.
pretty common across like all cultures.
Right?
Um, we say it in different ways. There's
Right.
multiple ways that I could express that you
Hmm.
and I are going to be exclusive. Also, a lot of humans don't even realize this. If I say I am in an exclusive relationship with a vendor,
Hmm.
who is exclusive to whom? If we are both exclusive to each other, it means I don't buy from anybody else
Hmm.
and they don't sell to anybody else either. I don't think that's the exclusivity that we want. I don't think we mean mutual.
I mean, yeah, that's
I
where I
think
think
it's a
at
one
this point,
way.
the lawyers would be able to at least draft like a precedent that basically says that it's only one-sided and not mutual. But I think that's a good point. But I guess I would just say like this seems very, it brings us back to the earlier conversation where it's like if you're creating like a society culture change like this, because this seems like a very big way of changing the way that the law is currently practiced. Like, for
Mhm.
example, I agree it almost seems like you're centralizing the decentralized kind of practice right now, because right now you have different large companies and law firms that own templates or precedents, which make it the market standard. And those that, for example, who work in fund finance or who work in like, M&A will understand when you say one thing that, 70% of the market that you're in will interpret it this way versus like, say like someone from litigation will look at it and be like, okay, why would you say that? But it's like an industry standard, which, definitely gets litigated afterwards. But you're basically saying that instead of it being like just like market standard or industry practice group specific standard, you want it to be standardized throughout everything somehow, with AI kind of being like your anchor.
More of a native language of AI.
Uh-huh.
AI's native language is not human language, it's data. So we have to structure the data in a better way. Um, I do see problems when we try to get structured data out of our human contracts. If you were to
Mm-hmm.
just give a 300-page contract to the AI and ask it like, give me a summary or tell me about this,
Mm-hmm.
it will have a difficult time with the parts, especially where the humans made the mistake. They left things out. It's said unclearly. Like, is this exclusive or not? We don't know. The human wrote it in such a way that it is unclear. They did not use the right words. So I think maybe there's a stepping stone here. Maybe we don't go straight to losing human language. Maybe we ask the AI, instead of me sending my contract to you and have
Mm-hmm.
you figure out what I meant,
Mm-hmm.
maybe instead I, being the person who wrote the contract, I can show it to my AI and ask the AI, is this clear? Is there anything that I'm missing? And
Okay.
when it does that, maybe I can ask it like parse out all the data, give me the precise data. Now I have a
Mm-hmm.
data structure, a data tree,
Mm-hmm.
and I have my original human language, and I can
Okay.
give both to you.
Right. And I
Now
think like
you're
theoretically the idea of having like one like language would be very good and helpful. However, I think this also brings the question to me kind of like is it using it in a contextual sense in the sense that it's using English kind of like the JSON, or are we talking about AI to under the hood where like each character is like letters or binary numbers, right? Because I've
mhm,
definitely seen a situation where like um the customer gave us two documents and said that like the AI tool is saying that they're different, but they're literally a duplicate of each other. And so they're like, is something wrong with your AI? And then the tech team gets involved and says, actually, one for some reason is like 450 KB, and then the other is like 300 KB. So there is something under like the actual base level of data analysis that was changed in between the two, and we're not sure what, probably when it got compressed or like, the settings when you're duplicating. But if we're going beyond like the language of like, say, like linguistics, like English, and using kind of the contextual analysis, then we basically have to move all of lawyering outside of English, and everything has to be funneled and translated through AI, because it will be not looking at the letters, but it should be looking at then that.
Uh-huh.
Is that
So,
the
so
ultimate goal?
what if we took all of these different issues and concepts in law and we put them into like a standardized list? Like even when I said there are all different kinds of exceptions to
Hmm.
obligations, how many types of exceptions are there? I'm sure they're not infinite. I'm
Hmm.
sure there's a finite number of them, and maybe
Hmm.
they go into different categories. How many
Hmm.
categories are there? Maybe 5 or 10, and then within each of the categories, how many kinds of exceptions are there? I don't know, maybe 50 or 100. We find all of these, and then if I say, because a lot of lawyers like to be sneaky when they're
Hmm.
making changes. They like to say, this obligation applies except
Hmm.
if, and then they'll say like if I make a decision, and then right there it's unilateral. I decide whether an
Right.
obligation that I'm obligating myself to applies
Right.
at all. So I'm just
Right.
taking it away completely. So that's a very we do sneaky things like this. But if it's absolutely clear, like this is an exception type, I don't know, number 1000,
Hmm.
and now it's completely clear, no matter how you write it, we all know that you just
Hmm.
put a unilateral exception to an obligation. And when your AI, if your AI was reading my word salad of
Hmm.
human language, it might not catch it because it might not understand it. It's sneaky. It hasn't seen it before or whatever. But if you were to show like this data structure and it goes through obligation by obligation, obligation, and it's looking at the exceptions and it sees, aha, exception 1000.
Hmm.
We know, the AI knows that Victoria does not accept
Hmm.
this exception 1000. We all know it. And it's
Yeah.
clear to everybody. It's obvious. We all know where everything is now.
Okay. I think you're kind of talking about having like a standardized, standardized contract or standardized
Something
agreement,
closer.
pretty much like almost worldwide, which I agree would really help, like for credit and finance, even beyond just like, fund finance, you have the LSTA, which provides like standard provisions that like almost all law firms have agreed to, right? Like they may not agree to it for their certain clients, but it's always going to be based like if you give an LSTA provision aside, going like, hey, you want to add something, let's pull it from an LSTA and start from there. Both sides will agree that the precedent template is not like too biased off the market, right? And I think that's what you're kind of getting at, where you're just kind of like you want some kind of version of lawyering where like the AI will have like not an LST but AI precedent that everyone will go for. So any changes to that, it will be
We
clear
need
to AI.
we need boundaries. We need standardization.
I mean,
Like
I think that's really good. I feel like you mentioned it earlier too, but due to just kind of like the messiness of human nature and like, the nuances of, like you're just starting out your seed company, you're willing to like, you're willing to basically give them a full refund if like, like Microsoft was your client and then you're like Microsoft's pissed off, we'll give you a refund, just don't say anything bad about us, Versus like say if Microsoft is, contracting with say LexisNexis, we'll probably be like, no, we're good lawyers like us, like you get the standard contract and we're not going to give on like liability issues, right? uh, I want to say yes, like standardization is great as a goal. It might be one of those places where like you have too many cooks in the kitchen in order to get them all agreed upon it, because you're gonna have to convince your C-suite, you're gonna have to convince your legal,
mm,
and you're gonna have to convince your salespeople that this type of language and whatever cool creative idea that they had in order to get that deal, uh, would not apply because we're deviating off the template, But I agree,
uh,
like a standardization would
I,
create efficiency.
I could see some kind of an AI tool being created
Hmm.
that gives a rating to your
Hmm.
templates of how standard they
Hmm.
are. If you're like 90% standard,
Hmm.
95% standard, to the point that you could then use that score as a marketing thing. And you could say, hey, customers, like if you're Microsoft,
Hmm.
you know that you're in a very strong position. Nobody
Hmm.
can negotiate. Um,
Right.
but if you were Microsoft and you said, "Look, we just used this AI tool. It told us that our templates are 95% standard. You're
Hmm.
not going to find crazy stuff in our templates."
Hmm.
You think you think more customers would want to do business with them because they'll be like, "Oh, it means we don't have to redline as much. It's going to be an easier time to negotiate this." Thank you.
I mean, I,
We'll go with
you know,
Microsoft.
practically speaking or theoretically speaking, I would agree. Yeah. I think some vendors like Legal On and is it DraftWise already have some sort of like, rating version based on the playbook, which
Hmm.
basically says like how far off you've gotten off. Implementation wise, I can see where again the messiness occurs because in order to create something like that, or the risk rating, which another engineer talked to me about, you have to have
There's all
enough,
kinds of ratings we could do.
right? But then in order to implement that, you have to have, first of all, you have to have the data. So you have to have like the market kind of data to understand like what is the gold standard, agree upon the gold standard. And then you have to also understand and like, are there any priorities that will get double weighted? And someone has to tell you like, how to calculate that and like whether the deviation, like, is it a materiality deviation? Is that going to just be like a small deviation or is that like a full like one versus zero kind of rating, right? So practically speaking, I'm like, I do see it being a lot of work to implement. I think that if you can, theoretically speaking, if you can put like a rating on there from standardized contracts and then you implement it correctly, then like it would definitely be helpful. Uh, I do pause on the practicality because I do remember when like, yeah, machine learning wanted to create kind of like a playbook rating thing. And I realized in order to create one, there's a lot of questions that you're going to have people in your industry agree to. Like Victoria, as like having 2 years in house, is not going to be the same as having like 10 different GCs, maybe one in automation and maybe one in cars and one in like food and beverage will agree to as being like, this is a deal breaker or this is a huge deviation. We only care about three things. And another person be like, we care about the whole thing. But yeah, I would say theoretically, if we can get there, we can get everyone
I,
to agree.
I feel like we just went through a demo for the audience of how to analyze innovation, how to think outside the box, think
Yes,
into the future, and then think through what are all the implications. How
that makes sense.
difficult would this be to do? Like you're telling me my blind spots and kind of stuff, which I
Right,
love.
right. And then like
So
if you were the vendor and you're like, this is great, we're gonna fix all that, then like as a client, I'd be like, okay, let's keep talking, right? You're right. Yeah.
so you want to
So
buy my product? Nice. Okay.
yeah, like if you're like, we will fix your blind spots and this is our panel of people and this is, we're only gonna do food and beverage procurement and that's why our rating is gonna work for you guys. I'm gonna be like, he has good answers. I can
Okay.
probably give him to the CLO and be like, you want this. So yeah.
Uh, so let's finish up a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think from the idea of the audience. We have people who want to do innovation.
Mhm.
They see opportunities. They're trying to identify problems. They're trying to identify the people and the audience that can describe
Right.
the problem to them. They're trying to develop their critical skills so they don't just buy anything. They're trying to think through all the issues of like, is my organization even ready? And
Right.
let's say let's put it like this: what kind of advice can you give a person who wants to do this kind of thing? And let's say they're getting a lot of pushback. Um, they're not in an organization that wants to do it the right way. They
Mhm.
want to just buy the flashy thing off the shelf because innovation is kind of a PR thing. They don't
Mhm.
want to do the hard work. What about the person who's alone and they're a pioneer? What would you encourage them to do
Oh
in this
God,
kind of a situation?
listen, like that is a good question. If they're alone and like the C-suite doesn't want to innovate and they're just kind of like, we have three big name companies that everyone else is getting, so we're gonna get one of those, and like, our board's not gonna come back and say you did the wrong thing. Practically speaking, I would say first of all, sign up with the first three, right? Because like, you're not gonna win that battle just being yourself against like a C-suite. But what you can do is continue to research about the companies that you do like or understand what workflows and what areas of your company that would really benefit from innovation. And then once you have the AI tool that has been approved, try to get people on, like, get allies and get champions that are willing to use it and tell you what they do or don't like about it. And I think that will probably give you like a better idea of like who your end users are, what the problems that they want to solve, and why it's currently like the big name tool is solving it or is not solving it, and will give you like a good point of basis to be like, this is my internal checklist for ABC code. And then after that, I would say then I would start, being political, working my way up. But first, I would actually start with like the end users and just kind of be like, you have, say, like, we'll say Harvey. You have Harvey AI. What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? And if, for example, I think that something is better than Harvey, I would try to make a list of them, have as many people tell me why they like using Harvey, and then at the end user level, be like, what about this tool? Of course. No knocks Harvey, by the way. But, kind of like that, and try to bring it up that way where they're kind of like they have access to an AI tool, and then if they actually use it, and then now if you can go back to the C-suite and be like, look, out of like our 100 people organizations, 20 people use this tool and they want to use it, but here are the problems, and here at this company they solve
Nice.
it. Like, here is a demo, and I would probably have like a demo for them. We're actually doing it, not like a hard coded demo, but I'm going to be like, this is with our document that has been redacted, and this is kind of the workflow where people use it. This is where Harvey's breaking right now, or not breaking. But this is where the tool is. Of course, if Harvey's doing great, then go for it. We don't even need to do that. But I think I would do it that way. I wouldn't, for the lone pioneer, I wouldn't try to like, fight the whole company at this point, because there is one thing in the sense that like the top tools do have like a standardization. And when I review the tools myself, you're not getting a huge gap between the top tools, right? And like at
Mm,
least at this point. So you're getting there. And it's just like if you've already distilled into what your company needs and it's different, then it's a different fight, And that one is like getting the end users. And if you have like 20 end users signing on and being like, yeah, we agree with Justin. Like I like Harvey, but I really want definitions checker. Like then the CEO is gonna be like, okay, well I don't understand what's the big deal. It's not as pretty, but maybe we could do a pilot. It's gonna be a different conversation. So.
okay. And maybe lastly, you went on you changed your trajectory from lawyer to engineer and back a little bit of lawyer. Maybe there's a mix of these. Um,
Mhm.
would you recommend that to other people as they want to go down technology and being able to
Oh.
do these kinds of skills? Like what kind of suggestions would you give to people who maybe they're like, I could go do this myself. Like maybe they are that lone pioneer and they're like,
Mhm.
I want to get even more skills and go deeper into this and really do this.
Uh, that is a great question. Justin, I would actually punt that one and say like, hey, if you are thinking of a large career change, I would probably have like a mini session, 1 or 2 sessions with like a career coach, and like read things like transitions to really understand like why do you want to do this? Are you just unhappy with your company? Are you unhappy with what you want to do? Do you have a passion? Is your passion more important than like paying the bills? Or do you have tons of money so that like you can really all in on your passion and get into like the next Y Combinator, or Techstars, right? There's a lot of questions there that like doing exercises such as like the life wheel, work wheel, value system would probably give you, again, kind of similar to our evaluation of legal tech, but evaluate yourself as a product and like your end user and like
Wow.
what is working and what's not working. And I think if you
Would
make a
you buy
decision from
you?
there, yeah, would you buy you? And if not, what do you need to fix in order to buy you for that market that you're trying to utilize? And if you get that answer, I think, and you're kind of like, yes, for sure, I should be targeting this market and I'm going to change this way, then yeah, go for it. I think, but you do realize
Perfect.
that everything there's some consequences. You may need to take like a pay cut, there may be some hustling. I DM'd a bunch of people when I was doing my changes, like there were a lot of like cold DMs where I was like, look, I want you to take a chance on me because I created this. Here's my GitHub. And then there were a lot of DMs afterwards where I'm like, hey, I'm great for tech because, your CISO doesn't have to read the like MSA now because InfoSec, ISO 20001, I got you. Your CISO can do what they want. But like, it's a lot of hard work and I think it's doable. But my first thing would be like, maybe get like a reasonable life coach, or if not, Google and like try out the wheel of life, wheel of work, and your value system and really evaluate yourself like you would evaluate a legal tech. But go for it if you want to.
Nice. Well, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for
Um,
having me, Justin.
and do you have any parting words? And if people want to connect with you, are you open to connecting? And
Yeah.
how can people connect with you?
Sure, I
if
am
you're going.
open to connect with anyone. I will probably not give any life advice because that freaks me out because I've definitely been there where, like right straight out of boot camp, I was like, did I make a mistake? Should I email my old partners back? And be like, how's it going in finance? Like I've had my sabbatical, willing to come back. But like because of that, I feel like that needs to be an internal decision. But if you just want someone to like, riff off of, I'm happy to give you the resources that helped me and just to connect. Would love to hear more from people who are in legal tech, also people who are legal tech curious, people who are practicing. Like, tell me, are you also a fan of definitions or are you a fan of something else? Because like everyone has something different. I have a friend in litigation who like we agree on nothing because none of the tools I like he uses because he's in litigation, right? So things like that. Happy to connect. You can find me on LinkedIn.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Victoria Lee.
Thank you, Justin.
And yeah, and I hope that everyone gets a lot of benefit from this and they take up Victoria on her offer. And yes, thank you so much for this discussion. And to our audience, I wish you happy automating.